So Google basically was found to be a monopolist in general search services. And I think that's probably no surprise, right? We all use Google. I think they have 80 or 90% of the search queries in market share. But specifically, what was found to be illegal was Google paying many other third parties, including Apple, Mozilla, Samsung, other OEMs, to set Google search as the default search engine at all the access points that, where you need to access the internet. So for instance, behind a browser, behind Mozilla Firefox, or behind Apple Safari. And so what the judge said is, well, by placing Google as the default, this really blocks out all the other competitors, the search engine competitors. And at the end of the day, they can't get better if they can't get to customers, because search engines get better based on the number of searches done. And Google's got all those searches locked up. And that was anti-competitive because it was exclusionary and probably hindered innovation, might have hindered choice, and possibly hindered quality.
However, the stock is unchanged on the news here today, suggesting that the market doesn't really care. Should the market care here? Are there some remedies that might be really onerous on Google?
I think there could be. I think part of the reason the market's not really reacting is because this was just a liability phase. So the remedies have yet to be hashed out. And, that process could take 6 months. It could take even another year before we know what they are. And then Google will likely appeal and can seek to stay any remedy pending the appeal. And if that happens, you're looking at several years before there's any impact at all. But at the end of the day, the remedies could be onerous. First of all, the DOJ will seek structural change. I don't think they could win it here, but one of the requests they might have of the judge is to break apart parts of Google's business.
Wow.
Again, I think that's a long shot here. I don't think it'll happen. I think it's more likely that what the judge will say is, Google, you can't pay anymore to have that default position. And maybe the judge will say, Google, you have to share some of your data with some of these other search engines, or maybe some other new nascent search engine that comes into being after this remedy phase is finished.
Okay, so if that's the case, I wonder, does this change if President Trump wins the White House, or is this kind of like locked in?
It's such an interesting issue right now, Alex, because one might have said if an administration changes from Democratic to Republican, it could change, and there might be more of a likelihood of a settlement. But you have J.D. Vance as former President Trump's vice presidential pick, and he actually is aligned with the idea of breaking up Google. He's pretty anti-big tech. I don't know how much he would influence the policy decisions of a Trump, DOJ, or FTC, but if he did, he would be all in on continuing to go after Google. So I think that possibility of some kind of a settlement that's easier on Google happening down the road is low.
Jen, I think if you stopped any person on the street, they would say, I got no problem with Google. Actually, it's great. It's changed my life for the better. Is this one of those issues where it's a solution in search of a problem here? And does that factor into remedies?
Exactly. You're thinking like a lawyer now, because
that hurt.
There's a lot of commentary when this case was brought that the DOJ brought the case, but they really don't have a solution, and they brought it before they knew what the solution would be. We're going to get into what they're going to suggest the solution, but Paul, exactly why you said, people love Google. And this is exactly why I think the judge wouldn't do something structural, because he's not going to want to mess that up. People like Google. Google's essentially a free product, at least for people, not for advertisers. And it functions very well. And despite having a monopoly position, the judge did acknowledge that Google continues to innovate in the search area. So I think because of the desirability for consumers of the Google search engine, we're not going to see something structural. But I do think, obviously, the judge is going to have to impose some remedy because he found that the company is acting anti-competitively.
This is a weirdly unfair question to ask you. Is big tech too big? Like, do we have a big tech problem?
Well, I think that's what the current administration thinks, yes. But, there's a disalignment here with our Supreme Court, because our Supreme Court has ruled over and over that it's not illegal in the United States to have a monopoly. And in fact, that's what we want all companies to work toward, because that's what will cause them to innovate and try to gain market share by lowering their prices. So at the end of the day, just being big, at least today, isn't illegal. The problem is the conduct of a company that's really big. Right. And that's really what the DOJ and FTC are going after right now.
How about other tech companies? What does this mean for them?
I think it's atmospherics because there are different facts, different issues, different markets, and different market positions. The case against Amazon, against Meta, there are more case against Apple. They're quite different, and these cases rest on the facts and the specifics. But what this does do, at least for Google, we have one more case coming up, a big one against its ad tech stack that's going to trial this September. And now Google's been found to have monopolized two different parts of its business, its Play Store and now search. So psychologically, it could influence a judge to think, well, they've been found to engage anti-competitively in two areas, why not in a third as well?